r/AskReddit. What is the creepiest, scariest, strangest unexplained experience story you've had, heard or know? I've shared this story before and this still creeps me the hell out. Growing up, there was this girl who always freaked out of the other neighborhood kids. For example, she told all the girls that in the forest behind her house there were dead bloody people in it. All the kids freaked out and told their parents, which resulted in all the dads doing a search in the forest, only to find hot pocket wrappers and empty beer bottles. After that, all the neighborhood kids refused to go near her, including me. A few years later, my parents got a divorce. The day that the movers came to my dad's house to get my mom's stuff out, the girl comes out of nowhere. She said that Matt didn't like that my parents were getting a divorce. My dad ended up telling me that Matt was her imaginary friend that was often too physical. Even though I stopped being friends with her, her parents were still friends with my dad. Her parents told my dad that Matt could control the lights, even making the power go out one time. Matt also knocked on doors at night, but if he was ignored, the banging on the doors would start. 2 years after my parents' divorce, my dad decided that he would invite that whole family over to catch up. I was begging my dad not to, but he said it would be nice. So when they came over, my dad said to show the girl my bedroom, since I got a new TV. I show her to my room, and she is acting normal and complimenting my room. I was still creeped out because she just sat on the floor while I tried to put a movie into my DVD player. And I kid you not, but out of nowhere, mid-conversation, in the most deadpan voice, she said, "Matt's here." At that exact moment, the lights flickered, and I ran out of my room crying. Her parents ran into my room and dragged their daughter out and went home. I refused to sleep in my bedroom for weeks. I haven't heard much from that family ever since then. I heard that Matt still controlled the lights, but I don't know if he is still around. Even to this day, when the lights flicker or a bulb breaks, I still freak out. I was about 11 when this happened, and it remains one of the scariest things that has ever happened to me. I grew up in rural Ireland and our house was the last of 4 houses located on this country lane. I used to get the bus home from school every day, and ordinarily the bus driver would drop me at the top of the lane, and I would walk the rest of the mile or so to my house. This day was no different. I jumped off the bus and started making my way down the road towards the house. I was about halfway down the road when I heard a car driving up behind me. I stood in off the road on the grassy verge and the car slowed down to a stop beside me. I didn't recognize the car at all, or the man in it, and I remember thinking instantly that something wasn't right. This is a rural area, everyone knows everyone, and strangers stick out like a sore thumb. The guy rolls down the window and says, "Hi Karen, do you want to lift the rest of the way?" My name is not Karen. So now I know for sure that this guy is up to no good. I tell him that isn't my name and say that I'm grand anyway, I can walk. He just sort of nodded at me and didn't say anything else, so I just started walking on away from the car. I was really nervous at this point. I didn't look behind me, but I hadn't heard the car reversing or driving away, so I just assumed he was sitting there watching me walk. After a few more meters, I look behind me, and I see that he has gotten out of his car and is walking after me. I took off running up the road. I could hear him running after me, and it suddenly occurred to me that my parents probably wouldn't be home from work yet, and my brother, who was older than me, was probably still in school, so I would be alone in the house. That's when I started crying. I finally reached our driveway, ran up and around to the back of the house and burst into the kitchen to find, lo and behold, my brother sitting at the kitchen table, eating toast. He had skived off school for the afternoon. At this point my heart felt like it was going to come through my chest, and I was so out of breath from running and crying that I could hardly even explain to him what was wrong, except that there was a man. My brother played one of the national sports in Ireland during his teenage years and grabbed his hurley, an Irish version of a baseball bat, to simplify things. He ran outside with it to find this man at the bottom of our driveway. He went down to confront him, but the man took one look at my brother and the hurley, turned and booked it out of there. We told our parents, who reported it to the cops, but nothing ever came of it. I don't know for sure what that man's intentions were, but I'm certain he meant to harm me. I think I narrowly avoided an abduction. It makes me wonder just how many kids come across creeps like that and don't manage to escape. We only ever hear of the big newsworthy abduction stories, but I'm sure kids get stolen on a pretty regular basis. Open bracket. My dad's like that too. He kids around, but doesn't bullshit stories. He told me a story about a creature he saw once. Something I believe was a skinwalker. This was in the very early 80s in late fall, before I was born. My sister had come down from Toronto to visit with my parents. She left sometime a little after 9 p.m, but roughly 7-ish miles away from home. Her car broke down. At least she broke down in front of a family friend's house and they said she could use their phone. She called dad and he came down and picked her up. The friend said that she could just leave her car in the driveway until the next day. She decided to just stay at our parents for the night and head out in the morning. As they're coming back home, it's now a little after 10 p.m. While driving through a particularly wooded spot, they heard a loud inhuman scream. It was so loud, it drowned out the radio, the engine, even their voices for the split second it happened. Dad slammed on the brakes and they started freaking out at what was that noise, when suddenly something appeared at the edge of the car's lights on the side of the road. It was a coyote, at least 7 feet tall, and was walking on its hind legs, and had a black/white striped tail. It walked across the road in front of the car, then once it disappeared across the road, they heard that scream again, only far louder than the first time, and they got out of there. I've had a few strange experiences in my life, but here's one of the creepier ones I've personally had. My parents live in a house built in the 1760s on the coast of southern Maine. It's a center chimney cape with a long L off the back. When they first purchased the house, I did some research on the property and the owners through the years. The house was built by the Eaton family and was handed down through the family from generation to generation until about 1860, when it was sold. Between 1820 and 1830 the Eaton family lost both parents and 8 of the 9 children to premature death. Most of them died of tuberculosis. I had returned home from college to stay with my parents during winter break. January in Maine is bitter cold, and in an 18th century house, all the more so. My little sister, who was about 15 at the time, and I were sharing a bed, partially for warmth, partially because I'm a sissy and the damn old place has always creeped me out a bit. The bed was in a downstairs front room of the house. The only other person in the house at the time was my younger brother, who was in the back L, far across the house from us. I woke up around 8 a.m. rather abruptly because I could hear intensely labored breathing coming from my sister. At first I thought she must have come down with a terrible cold and was really congested. I lay there for a couple minutes and then finally rolled over to check on her because it sounded awful, like an asthma attack or a death rattle. When I rolled over I immediately saw she was on her side facing me, wide-eyed. She whispered, "That's not you?" The noise continued, and it was loud. There was nothing subtle about it, and it was coming from the bed, directly between us. We jumped out of bed, checked under the bed, checked the entire room, and the while the breathing continued. Finally, at a loss, we just stood on either side of the bed, facing each other and listened in disbelief. It stopped abruptly. I have no explanation for that. My parents have owned the house for almost 10 years since then, and a variety of odd things have happened, though no one else has ever heard the labored breathing, which I rather think is just what it would sound like if, say, a person were dying of tuberculosis. Let me know if you guys would like to hear a few more stories about the house. I've got a bunch. Well, a long time ago, about 7 years now, I was in my bed at my barracks and had an unexpected visitor. It was about 11 p.m. to about 12 a.m. I was awoken by a voice, indistinct, as in I couldn't make out a coherent word. It was just garbled. I looked up, and the sleepy and confused me decided someone was visiting my roommate and decided to bug me. For some reason it's always funny to bother the sleeping guy. I grabbed my blanket and wrapped it around my waist upon realizing I was in my underwear. That's when the light hit the figure speaking to me. It was a woman. I couldn't make out her face. She was medium build and with longer hair. Again she spoke. I could not register what she was saying. I was falling asleep as she spoke, so it was merely the sound of her voice waking me back up. I was often fatigued after work. I glanced once again at the woman. I could not bring myself to attempt to talk someone who was clearly just trying to annoy me. I apologized and told her I was just too tired and to talk to me in the morning. I laid back down and nearly instantly was taken back by slumber. The next day I realized that my roommate was on vacation and had been for a while. In my sleepy state I had forgotten this, and my door was dead bolted. Even if someone had a key I needed to physically let them in. No clue who / what she / it was or what it wanted. I just know something woke me up and it tried to speak to me. Edit. I could move, so I think that rules out sleep paralysis. Edit 2. It's possible it could been a night terror, but I wasn't nervous. In fact, was more annoyed and wanted to be left alone. I audibly replied what? Each time I heard her speak. Like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed.